And wouldn't it be important to do a little taste test before you baked everything? I'm just curious.
Well, you
Just
can,
thinking.
but we're not going to be eating these. So these luminarias we're not going to be eating. These are for display.
Oh, you're not going to be eating
So-
them. I got you.
So and now I'm going to do red in the bottom one. And same thing, I'm going to fill it all in. And you can, like I said, you can do whatever shape, whatever size you want your luminaria to be. You could do a big horizontal one and make a scene. You know, you could have a reindeer and stars and a tree and make a whole scene for your stained glass. It doesn't have to be simple. It could be however detailed you want it to be.
Excellent.
So we're going to put these in and kind of mound, make sure we have a nice chunk of, a nice bunch of it mounded up in the middle so that when it sinks in, we've got a nice even window. And then we're going to put this in the oven and we're going to bake it. And if your recipe calls to bake it for 10 minutes, bake it a little bit longer. I usually go about half as much as long because you want these to be really crispy gingerbread. You don't want them to be soft gingerbread because you need them to stand. And so you want it to be very crispy.
So this is really more for, like you said, just display
This
as
is
opposed
display.
to
This is
eating
not
the
to be
thing.
eaten.
Okay.
I mean, you can make these and eat them, but this is really display. So here we have our gingerbread all cut with our shapes cut in it and our Jolly Rancher candy that's crushed up and put in the center, mounded in the middle a little bit so that it can sink in and will fill. And we're going to put this into the oven and we're going to bake it 1.5 times the time that they say to bake it. So if they say to bake it 10 minutes, we're going to bake it 15. We're going to add another half amount of time to that so that we get nice crispy gingerbread. We don't want it to be soft. We want it to be nice and hard so it supports the sides of our luminarias. So we're going to put this in the oven and bake it for 15 minutes. Okay. So we're ready to take our gingerbread out of the oven. And you can see that our gingerbread is spread a little bit and our candy has melted and bubbled up. So we're going to let that sit and it's going to calm down, it's going to settle. And you can see how we had it mounded up at the top, but how it's now sinking down. This looks really like we lost a lot of detail, but as the gingerbread cools, the shape's going to open up a little bit. So we're going to let this sit for a few minutes and then we're going to trim it to our template like we talked about. All right, so we've let our gingerbread cool a little bit and now we're going to trim it. But I also wanted to show you this oven that I just used is a little hotter than I'm used to. So because it was a little hotter, our candy really sunk in and really boiled a little bit away. So we've got a little bit of a thinner glass here than we had on the other ones because it's a little hot. So if that happens, you could always put more candy in there, a little bit more melted candy, and put it into the oven for about another minute or two and it'll fill it out a little bit more. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to take our template and we're going to lay it over this and we're going to trim off our perfect squares because we want to have perfect squares when we're building our walls so that everything lines up nice and evenly. So we've done that, and then I've taken that off. And now we're gonna let this completely cool because if I were to try to lift this right now, this melted candy would all just drip away. So we're gonna let it completely cool. When it's completely cool, we can peel it off the Silpat or the silicone mat and it's gonna be nice and hard and ready to build. So because we lost so much of the candy, it kind of really sunk in. I've added a little bit more of the Jolly Rancher candy to it and I'm gonna pop it back in the oven. I'm not even gonna turn the oven on. It's still hot from when we baked it. So I'm just gonna pop it back in there and let these melt in. We don't want them to cook, we just want them to melt. So it really doesn't have to be all the way up to whatever temperature your cookie's baked at. It can just be a warm oven. It can be even 100 or 140 degrees. And that will be enough to melt the candies again. We won't lose our shape of our cookie, but we'll get a nice more fill in the windows. And then let them cool completely. And when they cool, you can see you've got nice, beautiful little stained glass gingerbread forms.
They're like walls.
They are, they're walls.
They're
They're
walls
like
to this.
windowed walls.
Yeah.